The U.S. State Department has confirmed that it is aware of at least 3 Americans who have been reported missing after heading to Ukraine to volunteer in the war effort. New video that aired on Russian TV purports to show 2 of the missing men, military veterans Alexander Druki and Andy Wynn. These are still images from the footage. NBC News has not independently verified where and when these videos were taken. The State Department has confirmed it has seen the images, but maintains there has been no intelligence that the 2 men are in Russian custody. On Friday, the president was asked about the status of the 3 missing Americans. Here's what he had to say.
I have been briefed. We don't know where they are, but I want to reiterate, Americans should not be going to Ukraine now. Say it again. Americans should not be going to Ukraine now.
Back in March, NBC News reported that an unknown number of American veterans had decided to volunteer to help Ukraine fight the war, despite the U.S. government asking Americans to avoid the area. NBC's Ellison Barber is in Kyiv, Ukraine, and has been following this story. Ellison, what more do we know about the status of Mr. Druki and Mr. Wynn and that 3rd American who is believed to be missing?
So as for the 3rd American, the State Department has not confirmed the identity of that individual. They will only say that they are aware that an American citizen was reported missing in recent weeks and that that individual had come to Ukraine to take up arms. Russian state media, as you said, has published photos and a video allegedly showing Alex Druki and Andy Wynn in captivity. The State Department has told us that they are aware of the photos and the video, and they say they're in contact with Ukrainian authorities, the International Red Cross, as well as the families. But due to privacy considerations, they say they are not commenting further. A couple of days ago, the top spokesperson for the State Department said that they had not gotten any sort of concrete evidence or seen anything from Russian forces to indicate these 2 men are in captivity. But again, he had also reiterated what we heard President Biden say there, that they want any American citizen who is in Ukraine to leave if it is safe to do so, because they say it is not safe to be in this country right now. There are constant reminders of the war that is going on in Ukraine and in Kyiv this morning. Outside of this church, we saw yet another reminder here. 25-year-old Roman Ratushki was laid to rest, or the start of being laid to rest. His funeral was held inside this church. He is a well-known activist from Kyiv. As a 15-year-old, he was involved in the Revolution of Dignity. So when his casket left this church, it went to Maidan, Independence Square, the same place where as a teen, he and other students were beaten by police for protesting then-President Yanukovych's decision to back away from a deal that would have brought the country closer to the EU. He made the decision to join Ukrainian armed forces as soon as this latest large-scale invasion was launched. His friends say he was a freedom fighter and that Ukraine has lost a lot in his death. Listen to what some of his friends told us.
I think that the main value of Roman was freedom. And I want the world to know that Ukrainians die for freedom. And they died for Western values, for the values of Western civilization.
Thousands of people came to pay their respects to Roman Ratushny. He would have been 25 next month. People we've spoken to, they say this was yet another reminder of just the toll of this war, that it is taking some of the youngest Ukrainians and those who were their brightest hopes for the future. Michael?
Ellison Barber in Kyiv, Ukraine. Thank you very much, Ellison. Appreciate it. Now joining the conversation is Michael McFaul. He's a former U.S. ambassador to Russia and an MSNBC international affairs analyst. Good morning, Michael. The 3 Americans missing in Ukraine were all volunteering in the resistance against Moscow. And now at least 2 of them appear to be held captives by Russia. How does the Biden administration go back to getting them back? How do they get into that space to get these soldiers home?
It's not going to be easy with Vladimir Putin's regime. You know, there are rules, there are norms about if these were soldiers that were fighting on behalf of the Ukrainian army. They might have certain rights as a result of that. But just to remind everybody, there are other Americans being held right now by the Russian government unjustly. Paul Whelan, Brittany Griner, the WNBA superstar, has been held for several months. And just yesterday, Mark Fogel, a teacher that used to teach at the Anglo-American school, was convicted for 14 years for allegedly possessing marijuana. And those negotiations have gone on for years, in the case of Paul Whelan, unresolved. So I just would point out that the Russians don't play by the normal rules of the game in terms of these kinds of exchanges.
This week, the European Commission recommended Ukraine be granted EU candidate status. And so the question that I think really at the top is, how likely is this to happen? It won't happen overnight. And how long could it take?
Well, first, it was incredibly important that they brought that message to Kiev. I think it would have been a disaster had they made a different decision. Formally, that decision has to be ratified later in the month, but that all those leaders said it, I think was very important signal to all Ukrainians that they deserve and belong in Europe. Remember, as you were just reporting, they fought the Revolution of Dignity back in 2014 was because Ukrainians protested the decision of President Yanukovych to not sign an accession agreement, an association agreement, with the European Union. This means a lot. That said, to your point, these things can take years, sometimes decades. So it's not a done deal, but it actually helps the government of Ukraine do the necessary market reforms, democratic reforms, anti-corruption reforms. It kind of ties their hands, things they have to do in order to qualify to join the EU. So I think it's a win-win for everyone.
So just to follow up on that, Michael, how does that then, in addition to the market reforms and the other things that will be, on the table for change, how does that impact the war? How does that impact the position of our European allies relative to Ukraine and the United States relative to Ukraine and Russia in this war effort?
Not directly. I'm glad you pointed that out. The war effort is separate. And the war effort, President Zelensky has said time and time again, and his government, they need to stop Putin's army from marching forward. Putin's army is marching forward incrementally, but they're making progress. There can be no peace negotiations until they stop the march of that army. And that's why they need more weapons, more effective weapons, and they need them to be delivered more quickly to stop the advance of Putin's army.
So I want to get into something that I think a lot of folks are sort of scratching their head about. This week, the Biden administration announced an additional $1 billion in military aid for Ukraine. And over the last several months, we've seen this process. It's almost like a slow roll of support from the West that they're putting in place for Ukraine. Why is it taking the West so long to do this? Just put it on the table, give them what they need so they can prosecute this war as opposed to letting Russia regain its footing and get the advantage. I
agree. I think it is too slow, too deliberative. And if we're going to try to help them stop Putin, we should be all in. We should seek to help them stop him as fast as possible. I think there are two factors at play. Maybe three factors. Number one, up until recently, the West, including the United States, our NATO allies, have been providing old Soviet material and not this new weaponry. And now that that has been exhausted, they're moving to these new kinds of weapon systems because there's not, there's only so much Soviet material left over from the Warsaw Pact days. Right. Number two, they are concerned about escalation. They don't want to give the Ukrainians weapons that can attack Russia. Now, I think there are other ways to achieve that without restraining the kinds of weapon systems, but I know that that is a consideration that the Biden team has had.
Michael McFaul, former U.S. ambassador to Russia, thank you very much. As the country prepares to celebrate Juneteenth tomorrow, Buffalo, New York is making special dedication for its first in-person celebration in 2 years. That's ahead.